This was not something I wanted to get into on the channel, but I gotta get off my chest. So, Nintendo sued LOVERoms last month for over $1 million according to reports, due to illicit reproduction, distribution, and public performances of Nintendo's protected intellectual properties. Which is a lot of syllables to say that LOVERoms was hosting a bunch of pirated ROMs on their site that people were downloading. This has stirred up the age-old debate that game vloggers and comment sections everywhere love to chime in on. Is pirating games morally wrong, and what are the reasons why you should pirate games? And to be clear, when I'm talking about ROMs or games in this video, I really do mean like retro game. I'm talking like NES, stuff that really doesn't get re-released. And I'll address that later on in the video. This whole thing is a debate that I don't really care to have, you know. The answer to it is pretty straightforward. It's not moral to steal or pirate anything, with the exception of if you're starving and taking that last loaf of bread is the difference between being able to job hunt again tomorrow or dying tonight. But everybody has their own different reasons on why they think piracy is good.
The game I want isn't in my country.
Which is, okay, fair enough. Can't play it otherwise, I guess.
The game I want isn't for sale anymore.
And that's fair enough. Talk to anyone who bought the Scott Pilgrim game.
The game I want is out of my price range.
That's less of a good excuse. I'm sorry, like, that's the price of admission. People deserve money before you deserve their entertainment. There's cheaper games.
The game I want is old, and I shouldn't have to pay for it.
And that's the dumbest fucking shit. Like, nah.
There isn't a demo for the game, and I don't want to waste my money.
You can't risk $60. If you can't risk $60, you need to rethink your finances.
I think the company in question is scummy because they already have money.
And?
I think copyright laws are stupid, and instead of doing something tangible about it, I just want to not pay for shit.
I'm not gonna... For my money, I'm 100% for games archives. After all, fair use states that copyright allows for educational purposes, and any art form needs its history if it's going to grow. There should be some organization that catalogs and archives every game still possibly attainable through any means. And that organization needs to be protected from getting their asses sued by companies that merely see an opportunity to flex their muscle. But I'm not really here to talk about those aspects. I came across a comment in a Jim Sterling comment section, and later on in other videos by guys thinking it was clearly the best showstopper to ever grace their view on this debate. And it went something along the lines of, give me one non-moral, non-legal reason why I shouldn't pirate games. I'm going to make an effort to meet this question halfway there, because as presented, this is actually fucking terrifying. What kind of person doesn't think that having both a moral obligation to support art and entertainment, along with legal obligations to not steal shit, isn't enough? Like, if you operate outside of doing what's right and the law, you have got to be one of the shittiest human beings on the planet. But instead, I think the spirit of the question can be interpreted as, how do these current laws and trends benefit the consumer should the consumer choose to follow the rules? And if the answer turns out to be not at all, should we be okay with that? Spoiler, the answer is not at all. There actually is an answer. This is an interesting take because it assumes that the outcome of not pirating is that consumers just play less games and, for the most part, game companies still make the same amount of money. After all, Nintendo isn't selling the NES versions of Lone Ranger, or Metal Gear, or Genghis Khan, or Super Off-Road. These aren't lost sales because none of these games were for sale. If you buy the old card of these games, that doesn't actually go to the creators or Nintendo. It goes to somebody who merely owned the game. Which, by the way, isn't a bad thing. In America, we actually have a law called First Sale Doctrine that protects the right to make money off something you invested in. But I get that it's hard to take Nintendo's side in this when no matter what happens, they're not going to profit. Except that's probably not the case because what you're actually taking away when you pirate games is the secondhand market, which I'm going to make a case that it does more for preservation of games than downloading ROMs en masse ever did. No matter how you want to spin it, you having a shit ton of ROMs on your hard drive isn't preserving shit past what somebody else already has on a hard drive somewhere. Games being on current systems and Steam for masses and casual fans to enjoy without the need to emulate is actual preservation. Actual, honest-to-God preservation. And what makes that happen is demand. And what makes demand happen is a strong secondhand market. The secondhand market influences what gets on digital storefronts and bundles way more than what you would want to believe. So your Coden 2 demands over $100 for its physical release at any given time, and it's all re-released at a very competitive price on the PSN. The NES version of DuckTales started rising in price, and it saw a remake and inclusion in the Disney Afternoon Bundle on PS4. Used copies of Mega Man never made Capcom money, but Capcom seeing Mega Man 6 go for the better part of like $50 or $60 for a good stretch of time made them make it available in a lot of collections. And the game doesn't even have to be a particularly popular or well-known game, as long as it has a strong second-hand price. Take The Adventures of Tron Bone. No one really asked for this to be re-released, but the game was considered a collectible and started pricing in the hundreds of dollars. And now it's been re-released on PSN for $6. That's $6 more than the company was making. They probably would have never considered putting it on PSN if not for the second. So you want a non-moral, non-legal reason to buy games? Secondhand market can thrive and show us what games people want to be saved, want to go back to, and that there's a strong enough demand that it benefits companies to re-release their games. When you download ROMs, when you pirate, you get rid of that secondhand market. You promote everything moving digital, and you show less of a support for games to legally be re-released, and you stifle companies to want to create lasting art. And let me focus on that last point, what I mean by create lasting art. I do believe games are art, and good art is always worth the price of admission, regardless of when you've encountered it. But if you're in the habit of pirating games, you send a clear message that once a game gets to a certain age, which seems to be old enough to be easily ran off my PC, the game is somehow magically not worth paying for and should just be free. Like, I've heard Jim Sterling say that he doesn't believe NES games are even worth $1 because they're just old. And that's a horrible message. Can you imagine what kind of games companies would produce if they thought that it only had a shelf life of like a year and that it wouldn't really matter past that? Like, why would you put your heart and soul into something if it's just going to make its money more or less off advertising and not be allowed to stand on its own merits? I bet we would see sequels out our asses as companies kept trying to retrend the same ideas, or we'll see companies wanting to slowly release games and pieces via DLC to keep that initial window bigger, or push pre-orders because that's all that matters, or just not care about fixing buggy-ass games because why would they? Except I don't have to imagine all that. That's the exact fucking world I live in because piracy happens. Those practices happened at the same time people started justifying stealing games. I started ranting there, so let me summarize what I'm trying to say, and we can all go back to holding the same opinions we already had prior to the video. The answer to, should you emulate instead of buying games, is no. You should buy your games whenever possible. The non-moral, non-legal reason to not download ROMs is so we can have a stronger secondhand market, which in turn makes the gaming industry competitive in re-releasing old classics. I know that right now the fact that most re-releases tend to be digital only is kind of a bad thing, and also kind of undercuts what I'm saying, but we should already be fighting that policy and buying physical copies whenever possible anyway. But physical or not, official re-releases is the best way to keep preserving old games for everyone and still support the studios that make great games to start. God, that was a mess of consciousness. Hopefully I made sense in all that. I normally don't try to talk about subjects like this. I normally just do Let's Plays. And sometimes I edit a long video praising a demo disc. You guys can check that out.